So, first of all, many happy returns of the day and happy birthday, Unicef. When I was invited to come and, join this occasion, so when I was invited here, I was asking Lopamudra, what should I be speaking about? And she said that you should speak about change. And I thought that that's a very appropriate subject, keeping in mind, you look at UNICEF as an organization that has survived 70 years on the global scene. It must be doing something right to manage change as an organization. In addition to that, I think in any of the long-acting transformational things that it does, it has to understand how to manage the change process. So this is a good time for all of us to get together and say, what can we learn from UNICEF and from large transformational changes that we see around that we can put to use. Particularly because today evening I'm told that there are a lot of not-for-profit organizations represented here, as well as leaders of tomorrow, like Yumi talked about, who are decision makers who need to understand the change process. So what we'll do is to walk you through a bunch of slides here. May we have the first slide, please? First and foremost, I think every great change needs a matching colliding force. This is very interesting. So if you look at Moses, for example, as a change agent, you can actually have the next 4 bullet points in there because I don't have a remote control here. So just keep it at that. So if you look at how Moses took his people across the Sinai desert to the promised land, for the pharaohs, the power balance was not in Moses' favor. Power balance wasn't in the favor of the people who had to flee from the merciless tyranny of the pharaohs of Egypt. Those of you who have followed the story of William Wallace, who opposed the English mistreatment of the Scottish people. If you have seen the movie The Brave Hearts, you'd remember that the English people who were ruling Scotland in the olden times, they had a very tyrannical thing called bride tax. So every Scottish wedding, they would take the bride away for a night for the pleasure of the English overlord, and then she would return. And William Wallace was just another man on the street who felt very violated, very angry about it, and took on the ruthlessness of the English Empire. Same way Gandhi took on British. Now, if we look at history, we realize that size of the adversary often guarantees the success potential. It's very counterintuitive. If we look at the adversities that we have to deal with today, that UNICEF has been dealing with all this time, over the last 70 years, we stop in our tracks when we see that this adversary is a huge monster, and we feel very helpless. So imagine that, Gandhi's predicament when he was thrown on the platform in South Africa by a white racist conductor of the railways. At that moment, the power equation was not in favor of Gandhi, and nor was it in his favor for many subsequent years, or Nelson Mandela's time. So the size of the adversary was significantly larger. Now, what that does is that it makes you famous because you are doing the David versus Goliath story. Now, if we look at our own battles that we have to fight today, my colleagues from the government, both Sri Reddy and Dr. Mehta talked about public health issues. People don't realize that even in today's date and age, we have 46% stunting among children in this very state. Now that's huge, because you're talking about a state of 4.2 crore people. 50% of that 4.2 crore people is below the age of 30, and young people are the demographic dividend we talked about. And then you have a problem of stunting. You look at the problem of skill development. You talk about 8 lakh young boys and girls who must be trained over the course of the next 3 years. Now, whether it is stunting to skill development, whether it's polio to fighting AIDS, whether it is terrorism to dealing with the problem of the girl-child feticide, whether it is narcotic control, everything is larger than life. And then we feel helpless. But we need to tell ourselves from the stories that we just saw that the size of the adversary is what guarantees the success potential. Because people at the end of the day don't want to climb molehills. People want to climb mountains. When you take on an adversary that is larger than life, people come across and they become part of the shared vision. Now, at this point in time, it would be interesting to look at how massively transformational change works. So let's go to the next slide. Now, if you look at the way great change works, it is fundamentally about 4 things. First and foremost, it is about pain. So great change is about pain combined with vision, and that in turn combined with a roadmap, and finally actioning it out. So transformational change, as we see in the last 70 years that UNICEF has taken up, in India, from penicillin to pulse polio, from eradication of earthworm to oral rehydration therapy. Okay? Whatever that piece we take, it begins with pain, vision, a roadmap, and an action. Pain is very important. Gandhiji said, Gandhiji always talked about feeling the pain. So when Gandhiji came, he went all the way to Bihar to find out the pain of the indigo growers. A lawyer who has just come from South Africa, landed in Gujarat, some illiterate indigo grower comes all the way to Gujarat and says, you must come, we have heard about you, come and see the difficulties that we are in. And he goes all the way because he feels the pain. And he was extremely fond of this bhajan where he said, Vaishnava jana to tene kahiye jo peed par aayi jane re. You are a true Vaishnava only when you can feel the pain. So if you look at human history of transformational change, it is not a left brain thing. It's not a policy thing. It's not a government thing. It is not a, big 4 consultants, blueprint thing. It begins by somebody feeling pain. Somebody feels that, oh my God, this is not the right thing. And then there must be a vision. Vision, the word vision comes from the Latin word vedere, which basically the ability to see, as in seeing an apparition, seeing a picture of a future that doesn't exist. And you picturize that future, pain-free future, a future where there's no inequality, a future where there is no child malnutrition. So you look at that future and you dream of that future so that other people one day can live in that future. So that capacity to create a vision for the future that doesn't exist is a very human thing. Animals don't do it. Only human beings are gifted with the capability to do it. So you feel the pain and then you create a vision. Once you create a vision, if that vision is larger than life, then other people want to be a part of that vision. Because as I said, people want to climb a mountain, they don't want to climb a molehill. You say free India, you say free South Africa, you get rid of apartheid, you get rid of hunger, you get rid of AIDS. So other people join the hands, and then a roadmap comes up. So if you have pain but no vision and no roadmap, then that pain is a false pain. If you have the pain and you create a vision, but you're not willing to put the roadmap and you're not willing to action it out, like Yumi said, you don't want mud on your boots. Now, action without vision is dangerous, and vision without action is just plain laziness. So when we want transformational change to happen, we have to keep in mind the anatomy, which is pain, vision, roadmap, and action. And that roadmap seriously involves some personal sacrifices. So if Gandhi would have been a non-resident Indian, I can guarantee to you, you and I would still be serving the British. There are a lot of well-meaning non-resident Indians who'd like to pretty much lead their own comfortable life, come to India and Odisha during the nice days of December when the weather is not torturous, and they have solution to India's problems. Now, the non-residency does not work. So Gandhi had to make that personal sacrifice, had to bring Ba back, had to bring his children back. He would have been a rich lawyer. He had already made name and fame for himself. So the personal sacrifice that he made actually led to Indian freedom. Now, without the personal sacrifice, it doesn't work. And by the way, sacrifice is very critical. But the sacrifice all of us expect is an organizational sacrifice. The government must sacrifice. Businesses must sacrifice. But if we really want to see true impact at the end of the day, and we want to see transformational change, that sacrifice has to start at a me, myself, and I level. The other very interesting thing is if you look at transformative change, it is all about average people and simple tools. Transformative change does not involve complexity. More complex it gets, people don't get it, people don't understand. So you look at the biggest freedom struggle in the world, which is the Indian freedom struggle, it was delivered with average people and simple tools. It wasn't delivered because McKinsey drew a plan or Bain and company created a strategy. If such high intellect people were involved, then would still be serving the British. It was an average people's dream. It was an average people's aspiration. It was an average people's movement. And simple tools. Gandhi delivered freedom on the strength of non-violence and non-cooperation. Very simple to understand. Non-violence, if you hit me, I will not hit you back. Non-cooperation, if you tell me to get up, I'll continue to sit. Even a 3-year-old child knows what's non-cooperation. Drink the milk, I'll not drink the milk. What can you do? Will you put me behind jail? No, you can't. You throw the child out of the door? No, you cannot. So non-violence and non-cooperation are so simple to understand that from Nehru to the indigo grower in Bihar, they understood the meaning of it exactly the same way. Transformational change requires that people read from the same page. People see it the same way. Two different people don't make two different interpretations of the same thing. It's very critical that as we roll that formula of average people and simple tools, we also keep in mind not 70 years, but the next 70 days. So early visible success becomes very critical. Now, Yumi talked about mud on the boots, so let me talk a little bit about mud on your boots. Transformational change cannot be a headquartered, focused revolution. The theater of action has to be the field. So revolution will not happen because Delhi wants it. Revolution will not happen because Bhubaneswar wants it. Secretariat wants it. The revolution is in Malkangiri. The revolution is in Udala. The revolution is in Raigada. The revolution is in Niyamgiri. The revolution is in the smallest of the small gram panchayats. Similarly, it just cannot be a copied work. Now, we talk about Swachh Bharat. We'll talk about the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushalya Yojana. We talk about the millennial goals. Now, the moment we talk about big templates, the difficulty is by the time it comes down to you and I, we basically abdicate our responsibility for innovation and improvement. These get reduced to what we call the lowest common denominator. So, a true transformational change cannot just be a copied work. It works like this in South Africa, so it will work in Bangladesh. It works in Bangladesh, and so it will work in Odisha. It works in the coastal districts of Odisha, hence it will work in Kalahandi. It doesn't exactly work like that. So we can't just abdicate our intellectual responsibility to look at how it must happen here and now by simply copying it. It cannot be weighed down by dogma. Every dogma has to re-engineer itself, and it is not something that is based on a material reward and recognition system. Transformational change, going to the next slide, is not a left brain thing, as I told you earlier. It is a very emotive thing. It's a very right brain thing. So Yumi talked about all the things that make UNICEF a great organization. Whenever she meets people, they said, oh, you do this, you do that. These are the many long lists of things that UNICEF does right. But you think about UNICEF, what makes UNICEF memorable, apart from its work, is its logo. The logo has a mother and a baby, and the logo has the world, and the logo has olive branches. So that's why UNICEF is cool. UNICEF does cool work, but it has also got the right emotional connection. And great transformative change is powered by icons, is powered by emotive feel that people have, and that association is a non-rational association. So you think of Fidel Castro. An entire country spent 3 generations, not one, 3 generations, on the imagery of Fidel Castro. You look at, for example, the charkha as a symbolic statement of non-violence and non-cooperation and about self-reliance. You look at the, Tiananmen Square man standing in front of an, approaching tank. These are messages, these are symbolic, these are emotive messages which have the power to galvanize millions of people. And if you look at the history of transformative change, it's also driven by content. Imagine the spread of Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism without the Bible, the Zen books, and the Bhagavad Gita, or the spread of Islam, for that matter, without the Quran, or the spread of communism without the book Das Kapital. So content has a very, very important role to play. When you look at transformative change, we need to look at content because it is content that gives hands and legs to ideas. When you put ideas and contents together, then ideas grow on ideas, and ideas start moving from place to place. Going to the next level, so for the great change process to work, we need leadership. And that leadership must have a view of change process itself. And transformative change would inevitably require critics and naysayers. Not just people who will give you constructive criticism, but people who will put you down. So the leader of the change process, the change agent herself or himself, must make allowance for critics and naysayers, must understand that you will not be able to take everybody along. There will be moments of derailment. We are seeing huge derailment right now on the demonetization drive. So this is derailment. And we need to understand that there will be some people who will do subversive compliance. They'll say yes, 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 but actually they're cutting your roots. So there will be people who will do subversive compliance. We can't get frustrated about that. Because when you sign up for transformative change, you necessarily sign up for all the things, including subversive compliance. The next thing that happens is a change process basically begins by questioning the state of things. So we basically begin with what is called the as-is condition. Wherever malnutrition may be today, wherever AIDS may be today, wherever literacy may be today, wherever terrorism may be today, you touch the as-is situation and then you come out with interventions. But the bad news first, when you come out with interventions, however well thought through they may be, to begin with you don't get better, you get worse. And that is where disappointment steps in. But the fact of the matter is that the as-is condition will worsen before it gets better. The change agent, the leader, must have humility and must go down to the grassroots level and begin with small but symbolic gestures. Gandhi's going to the indigo grower was a small but symbolic gesture. So a transformative process, when we deal with it, we many times as leaders and change agents, we get overwhelmed. Where do I begin? Everything is larger than life. Everything is very daunting. But we need to understand that we have to begin with smallness. Mother Teresa famously said that you don't do big things. You can only do small things in a big way. Change agents must know when you are dealing with, historic change, transformative change, you need to know when to confront and when to step aside. We're not here to change the world, immediately in one quick moment. So there will be times when you need to step aside, you need to make friends, you need to sidestep enemies. You can't take everything head on. And we have to understand that we have to be empowered inside. Empowerment is a very interesting thing. We think it will come from outside, but true empowerment has to come from inside. We have to be empowered inside, and we have to be accountable outside. Now, I'm going to skip a few slides here in the interest of time, and I will go straight to a very interesting thing called the change process. There's a slide with you. Please take that. What is the change process? If you look at civilizational change, if you look at transformative change, you look at societal change, you look at personal change. They follow a pattern called the U pattern. And this is not an original thought process of mine. There's a very famous student of change, a master of change, I should say, called Otto Scharmer. And those of you who are familiar with systems theory, one of the collaborators on systems thinking and systems theory with Peter Senge is this man called Otto Scharmer. Otto Scharmer has been deeply influenced with Oriental thinking, but Otto Scharmer is also a systems thinker, and he's studied change process at a collective level all his life. How societies change, why a particular city changes. We talk about smart city, Bhubaneswar. If Bhubaneswar becomes truly, truly smart, we are smart city, but collectively if we were to be smart or smarter, as Bhubaneswar people, we will have to change. How does a change process happen? Why one city becomes smart and another city doesn't become smart? What makes one people move from one era to another era? Why one state, one nation becomes suddenly prosperous? They go through a transformative process. And that process generally looks like the U. On top of the process, we begin by sensing. We sense the environment. And then that leads to a state that we call presencing. At the state of presencing, you understand, you get to know, you have your aha moment, so if I do this, there'll be a definitive outcome. And then comes the climb out of the U, the actual process of climbing out of the U through the solution, and this is called the process of realization or process of realizing. So you begin by sensing. We need to get better. We need to get free. We need to stop children from dying of malnutrition and oral dehydration. So you sense. There's data all over that begins to talk to you. If you stop sensing, then you don't have to really change anything. So all process, and I told you right in the beginning, all process of transformative change has to begin with pain. You feel pain from somebody else only when your sensory inputs are working. So it begins by sensing. But sensing alone does not work. We need to find out the answer. That answer process is a process of presencing. Once we get the answer, we have to work with the answer, and that's where the realization process comes up. So have a look at the last slide here. Pay attention to this slide. It's not as difficult and complex as it looks like. In our life, individual life, collective life, social life, national life, global life, all transformative process goes through a U. You begin to transform yourself when you take the first step towards presencing, which is suspending. You have to suspend your preconceived ideas. You have to suspend your preconceived notion. You have to suspend your sense of cynicism. You have to suspend the belief that, things will only be like this. Things cannot change. So the starting point of transformative change is to suspend. Once you suspend, you begin your sensing process. But the interesting thing is the moment we sense anything, questions come to the mind, and we don't have the answer. Questions lead to more questions. How will we ever do it? How can this problem ever be solved? But if we do try to solve this problem, these are the many other problems that will come up. How do we deal with it? It becomes a very frustrating process, and most people jump out of the U at that point in time. They say, oh, there's no point in trying to change Bhubaneswar. There's no point in trying to change Odisha. Who can ever change India? Things will only be like this, because you still don't know the answer. And the questions become daunting. So people jump out of the U. But those who persist, they keep battling with the question, so how do we crack this problem? Where do we go from here? But questions lead to more questions. At a point in time comes that you are so fed up of trying to find an answer. You're so tired, actually, that you fall at the bottom of the U. At the bottom of the U, it's a state of presencing where you no longer ask questions because you understand the futility of asking questions. You literally sleep through the night. And then the mind is at its calmest best. And out of nowhere, the answer presents itself. The answer presents itself because the mind is calm. And Peter Senge, in one of his books called Presencing, which he collaborated with Otto Scharmer, says that it is like the mind is so calm that it's like a lake, and you are standing by the shore of the lake, and even as one drop of water falls in the middle of the lake, you can hear that water drop. So the answer just presents itself. When Gandhi was thrown on the platform on a solitary dark night and his luggage thrown off, in that one instant, if you have seen the movie, Attenborough's movie, he was not looking angry. He was looking a little confused. But there was a certain calmness about the whole scene. You remember, try remember Gandhi's face. In that calm, he heard loud and clear that apartheid is not a good thing. The event was not about me being thrown out of the train, me being insulted. It was a moment of realization where the man says, this is fundamentally not right. So that is the drop of the water in the middle of the lake. And that's the state of presencing. So we begin by sensing, which must be preceded by suspending. But once you sense, you get to find more questions and not answers. And more you ask questions, less answers you get. You become so fed up. But sometimes you have to just stay with the problem. Not try to find the answer, but simply stay with the problem. The world is full of smart people. But the world does not make breakthroughs because of smart people. The world makes breakthrough because there are some adamant people who stay with the problem. And then comes a state where you are so calm that the answer presents itself. You're at the bottom of the U. And once you have the answer, life does not require you to sleep at the bottom of the U. It's not a state of nirvana, that, oh, I have got the truth. I know how to solve the world hunger problem. And now I can retire. The real journey begins. That's why it's called the journey of the U. The real journey begins when you have the answer and you start climbing out of the U. Falling is sometimes easier than climbing. Just because you have got the answer does not mean its work is all settled. Somebody else will go implement it. The real strife and the struggle begins. So those of us who think that we got our independence at the stroke of the midnight, that's not true. From the time that Gandhi was thrown out to the time that Indian tricolor replaced the Union Jack on the ramparts of Lal Killa, it was more than 50 years. So 50 years of strife one had to go through. So the climbing up process began, and then this is the process which is marked by something very interesting. If you look at the left side of the U, it says, above sensing, you'll see in tiny letters written, let go. Before you fall at the bottom of the U, you have to let go of everything. To let go of the questions, you let go of your ego, you let go of your notions, you let go of everything. Now, why do you let go? Letting go is a complex spiritual process. Only when you let go, you let come. So on the right-hand side, you'll find in tiny letters written is let come. When I let go, I let come. My mind gets evacuated. And when I let come, what do I let come? I let come of ideas. I let come of new friends. I let come of new associations. I let come of breakthrough concepts. But until I let go, I can't let come. And with the let come, you begin acting. You act on the promise. You take charge. You move forward. And then comes a time when you begin realizing, which is where the benefit of the truth, the benefit of the understanding, the benefit of the knowledge is given away to the world. So, once again, with the short time that we had today, thank you for calling me here. Happy birthday, UNICEF. And may many transformative change process be inspired by the UNICEF example. May UNICEF be there as a thought leader, as an action leader in our midst, and may UNICEF share its knowledge with many organizations, because today, if you look at the complexity that we talked about earlier, the world is fundamentally becoming more complex, which means that it just can't be one major actor. It can't be just the state. It can't be a huge multilateral body. We require many small UNICEFs in the world today, and I think in the years to come, we'll look forward to the continued guidance, sharing, loving, affection, and may the mother and child in the globe with the olive branches keep growing. Thank you very much.